school. A woman the other day said on Facebook, what is Bernie talking about when he talks about corporate socialism? What does he mean? What does he mean?
Here's the text. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. That's pretty basic, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it just... Yeah. And yet this still goes on to this day. How about...
Frederick Douglass had it. He said any nation of savages would be shocked. Mm-hmm. We're not only not shocked, we sit there. I saw tears streaming down people's faces last night in a crowd as the song, which just drives me up a tree. Well, at least I'm born in America. Give me the words there, Darren. Where I know I'm free.
Oh, God, Lee Greenwood.
Lee Greenwood.
I'll be controversial. I wish they would grab every single copy of that song and burn it. I never want to hear that song again.
And I'm telling you what,
Lee Greenwood.
There's not a tear duct of any conservative Christian in America that doesn't flow like the Danube when that song is played. Yet they can look right straight on to parents being detracted from their children forever, put in orphanages and adopted, and nothing moves them. But you put the Greenwood song on, and I think it goes like this. Well, at least I'm free here. I'm proud to be an American.
Yeah, I'm not going to play it. Yeah. I don't even think I have it.
Where at least I'm free. Where at least you're free. And I'm going to go back to it. I can't play it. You're free to be dumb. That's all you're free to be.
Yep.
You're free to be a consumer idiot. Line up and salute consumerism.
Yep. Yeah, free dumb.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Freedom.
It took me half of the show to finally get that. So anyway.
Well, hey, sometimes I go overboard. I was at a game. Florida played.
You never.
I was at a game. Michigan State was playing Florida years ago. And I was surrounded by Florida fans. And I kept going, Florida, Florida. And we were jumped. We were jumped before we got out of there. The only thing that saved us was a wall. We backed ourselves into the wall, or we'd have been hurt seriously.
Oh, my gosh. You're terrible.
Freedom. Don't forget, 4th of July. That's the moniker coming from Southpaws on July 5th, 2019. America's freedom.
We got our executive producer stirred up. Chico came over here.
He's over here saluting the word freedom.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, here's another example of freedom, folks.
Which one? Freedom or freedom?
This is Patrick Gathara writing an opinion piece for Al Jazeera. These are not the best of times to be a political cartoonist. Last week, one of Canada's top cartoonists, Michael Dieter, had his contract terminated by a publishing company in New Brunswick after a cartoon he did on Donald Trump went viral on social media. The cartoon featured the image of a father and daughter who drowned in the Rio Grande River while attempting to cross into the United States, lying face down in the water surrounded by reeds and interrupting Trump's game of golf. Trump asked in the cartoon, "Do you mind if I play through?" Although there is a dispute over whether the cartoon was the reason for Dieter being let go, Brunswick News Incorporated says it wasn't and that negotiations to replace him had been ongoing for some time. It is undeniable that the incident comes at a time when political cartoonists around the world seem to be on the chopping block. Oh no, that cartoon wasn't the reason that we got rid of him. This has been in the works for a while. Just weeks before Dieter was let go, the New York Times decided to stop publication of political cartoons after it was severely criticized on social media for publication of a cartoon that was deemed anti-Semitic. Although, again, the Times says that this decision had been in the works for some time. Really.
Land of hypocrisy.
In Kenya, too, world-famous cartoonist Godfrey Wampembwa, also known as Gatto, was fired from the Daily Nation in 2015 partly as a result of government pressure. In Turkey, Musa Kart, cartoonist for the country's oldest newspaper, is in jail. Malaysian cartoonist Zunar has had his books banned and has faced multiple charges of sedition. In Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Russia, Cartoonists have been forced into exile, while in the United States, some have been fired for being too critical of Trump.
The war on the media, folks.
According to Terry Anderson, Deputy Executive Director of Cartoonist Rights Network International, which monitors threats and abuses against cartoonists, listen to this statistic, Jack. Since 1999, over 100 cartoonists have been victims of murder, assault, kidnapping, physical intimidation, imprisonment, arrest, travel bans, police harassment, politically motivated lawsuits, freezing or seizure of assets, vandalism, cyber attack, online harassment, blacklisting, and bullying.
Darren, I want you to continue, but can I insert here, when you mention political lawsuits, the excellent journalist, Glenn Greenwald, who went down to South America and uncovered the truth. I don't have time to go through his articles, but he was making the conservative connection with death squads, et cetera, et cetera. So what did Brazil do with America's prompting? They decided to go after Glenn here this last week to say, we're going to investigate every button in his drawer and find any malfeasance that he's misspent a dime or whatever. It's intimidation. It's going to be months and months of harassment because he had the temerity to go down there and report the truth. Same truth that Chelsea Manning will probably die from exposing. I'm talking about she's suffering now to that point. Assange is close to dying. The war against journalism is ubiquitous, and Trump leads the charge. New York Times article I hope you get to about the woman who was hired from the business world to attack Bernie. They're
Sydney
good on that.
Ember.
They're alive there. They're good. They're neoliberal masters. They'll put them on, sick them on any progressive out there. You get all kinds of journalism there.
Oh, Sydney Ember. We'll talk about her if we get time here.
Dying Ember.
In their paper, Censorship and the Political Cartoonist, Dr. Hayden Manning and Dr. Robert Fidian, both of Flinders University, note the political cartoonists are, quote, the canary sent down the mine shaft of public debate to discover how fresh the air is there, how safe for freedom of speech, end of quote. If that is the case, then the air today is positively toxic for democracy. Reports from Freedom House, which has been tracking global media freedom for the last 40 years, show that the press has been under sustained attack for the last 2 decades. Its 2010 report had noted that the 2000s had witnessed an effort to restrict media freedom and that the internet and other new media, quote, had become sites of contestation between citizens attempting to provide and access news and governments attempting to maintain control, end of quote. Its latest report observes that in the following decade, global media freedoms have continued to deteriorate, quote, with new forms of repression taking hold in open societies and authoritarian states alike, end of quote. While much of the blame for this is laid at the feet of politicians and governments, corporations and the internet are as much to blame. The concentration of media ownership in the hands of a few firms has diminished the space for critical journalism. In New Brunswick, for example, the Irving family, one of the wealthiest in Canada and the owners of Brunswick News Incorporated, has had a de facto monopoly on the media in the province for decades, operating virtually all of the major print publications. This not only means that now Dieter is unable to get any of his cartoons published in his home province, but that coverage of issues tends to be informed by the Irving's corporate interests. In Kenya, according to a report released last year by the Amadayar Network, quote, every one of the establishment media houses is owned by either a politician, a close party affiliate, or a business person with commercial interests that depend on politicians' good graces, end of quote. Media coverage tends to be limited, if not directly dictated, by political and corporate interests. The sequence of events that led to Gatto's exit from the Nation Media Group, the owner of the Daily Nation, was sparked by the banning in Tanzania of the East African, a regional weekly owned by the group, following the publication of his cartoon caricaturing then Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete. Further, as newspaper revenues from advertising continue to plummet, this has given big advertisers, quote, huge influence, which often allows them to quietly control what is published and what is not. End of quote. That, you know who wrote that? The Committee to Protect Journalists. What they call backdoor soft censorship, generally invisible to the public, is a filter through which not just cartoonist images, but also news reports must pass before they are published. We've talked about that before right on this show. We played the clip of Ed Schultz where he was told by NBC not to cover the Bernie Sanders campaign.
Yeah. We were also showed on this show where the DNC scripted and wrote word for word what to say as the poll numbers came in to MSNBC and CNN. They literally wrote, CNN literally wrote the comments and the verbiage that the announcers on the mainstream media were to say. And they repeated it, they parroted it exactly. So the corporations, of which DNC is just one of them, don't just dictate. Like Chomsky said, the corporations don't influence the media. They are the media, and they will never be in conflict with their objectives.
Exactly. I want to continue reading this. However, it is not just advertisers that the media fears. Social media has also emerged as a critical threat. While platforms such as Twitter can provide valuable avenues for constructive audience feedback, they can also be a means of censorship. Patrick Chappett wrote on his blog following the New York Times decision to stop publishing his cartoons, quote, "We are in a world where moralistic mobs gather on social media and rise like a storm, falling upon newsrooms in an overwhelming blow. This requires immediate countermeasures by publishers, leaving no room for ponderation or meaningful discussions. Twitter is a place for fear, not debate. The most outraged voices tend to define the conversation, and the angry crowd follows in." End of quote. The need to avoid provoking the online outrage machine, which can lead to loss of subscriptions and ad revenues, make media less willing to publish articles, images, and cartoons that do not conform to popular opinion. Again, this is the canary in the coal mine that was just mentioned earlier.
Darren, can we touch on the article concerning the writing of one of these corporate media experts, Miss Amber? Is it Amber, their last name or first name?
Sydney Ember.
Ember.
Yep. I've got that right here. This is from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. This is by Katie Halper. This piece is dated June 28th of this year. I'm just going to read bits and pieces of it because it is very lengthy. We do have it on our website. Go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You'll find this article.
And Darren, before you start to read, remember, folks, we talked explicitly on this show in the last 2 or 3 shows in the last few weeks how the WAPO, how CNN, New York Times, et cetera, had a smear campaign going on against Bernie Sanders. Sophisticated, in-depth, and now if you listen closely to this article, it's going to be read to you, and for the most part, drawing from bogus resources, completely highlighted in the negative. This is the kind of corporate media control that people are subject to, and they don't know it. And one last thing, you need to go to Chomsky's excellent book, Manufacturing Consent. Mm-hmm. It is the cornerstone Bible of corporate control of the media, and there's a documentary, or even do yourself a bigger favor and get the book.
Yep. Again, this is from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. New York Times reporter Sydney Ember has a problem with Bernie Sanders, which may be why the paper has her cover him. Ember is supposed to write reported articles, not op-eds, but she consistently paints a negative picture of Sanders' temperament, history, policies, and or political prospects in the over 24 pieces she's done on him. This makes sense given the New York Times' documented anti-Sanders bias, which can be found among both editors and reporters alike. The paper was caught making significant changes without acknowledging them to a 2016 article on Sanders hours after it went up. They changed the headline. The original headline read, "Bernie Sanders scored victories for years via legislative side doors," and they changed it to, "Via legislative side doors, Bernie Sanders won modest victories." Notice the subtlety there. They deleted
Yeah,
a positive quote from a campaign advisor and added 2 negative